My own son humiliated me at a family dinner, mocked me for working hard all my life, and demanded I pay for his college while insulting me in front of everyone. I refused, and what happened next left me shocked, angry, and feeling a sense of justice I never thought I would experience. I never thought I'd be sitting here telling strangers about how my own son humiliated me in front of the entire family. But it happened, and it cut deeper than I ever imagined. You see, for years I have worked hard, provided for my children, and tried to teach them respect. But one evening, just one family dinner, changed everything. That night, my son mocked me, disrespected me, and made me question if all those sacrifices were even worth it. And when the time came, I made a decision that shocked everyone at the table. I refused to pay for his college. Let me back up for a moment. I'm a man in my 60s. My wife passed away some years ago, and since then, family gatherings have been the one thing that keep me going. I've got 2 kids, my daughter, who is married and lives not too far away, and my son, who is still in school. I've always tried to be there for both of them, though I'll admit, I've spoiled my son more than I should have. New phone every year, a car for his 18th birthday, and I even let him live at home rent-free while all his friends had to work part-time jobs. I told myself, he's just young. He'll learn responsibility later. But lately, he's become arrogant, rude. He acts as if everything is owed to him. My daughter has mentioned it too. She once told me, "Dad, he talks to you like you're his servant." I brushed it off at the time, but maybe I shouldn't have. So this dinner was supposed to be special. My daughter and her husband were visiting, and I decided to invite everyone over. I cooked, set the table, even opened a good bottle of wine. I wanted us all to feel like a family again. At first, it was fine. We laughed, shared stories. But then my son brought up the subject of college tuition. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "So, Dad, you're covering my tuition next year, right? I mean, you did it for my sister, so it's only fair." I was a little taken aback. Not because of the request, I expected that conversation sooner or later, but because of the tone. It wasn't a question. It was a demand. I calmly replied, "We'll talk about it, son. College is expensive, and you know I'm not made of money. We'll figure something out." But he didn't like that. He leaned back in his chair, smirked, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Wow. Imagine working your whole life and still being broke. Maybe you should have tried harder, Dad." The room went silent. My daughter's fork froze in midair. Her husband shifted uncomfortably. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My own son, my flesh and blood, had just insulted me, mocked me, in front of everyone. I tried to brush it off, to keep the peace. I said, "That's not fair, son. I've given you everything I could." But he wasn't done. He laughed and said, "Everything? Please. You think letting me live here is a favor? You owe me. You owe me for being a lousy father since Mom died." I swear my heart sank. It felt like a knife in my chest. My daughter spoke up then, tried to defend me. "Don't talk to Dad like that," she said firmly. But my son just rolled his eyes and muttered, "Of course you defend him. He always gave you more anyway." That was it. Something inside me snapped. I put down my fork and stared at him. "Enough," I said, louder than I intended. "I will not sit here and be disrespected in my own home." He shrugged and replied, "Fine. Then pay for my tuition and I'll shut up." And that's when I made the decision that changed everything. I leaned forward and said, clear as day, "No, I will not be paying for your college." His face turned red. "What?" he shouted. "You paid for hers," pointing at his sister. "Yes," I said calmly, "because she respected me. She worked hard. She treated me like a father, not like a bank. You insult me, belittle me, and demand things as if I owe you. So no, you're on your own." You could hear a pin drop. My daughter's eyes widened, my son-in-law nodded slowly, and my son looked like he had just been slapped across the face. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I sat there, shaking, my hands trembling on the table. My daughter reached over, squeezed my arm, and whispered, "Dad, you did the right thing." And in that moment, I knew she was right. The truth is, respect matters more than money. I worked too hard to raise a son who thinks he can treat me like dirt and still have me bankroll his life. That night, the roles shifted. I was no longer the desperate father begging for my son's love. I was a man demanding the respect I deserved. And let me tell you, the silence that followed his exit, that silence felt like justice. The moral of this story is simple. Money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy respect. And sometimes, the best lesson you can give your children is letting them face the consequences of their own arrogance. When my son stormed out that night, I thought maybe he just needed to cool off. I imagined he'd go to his room, slam the door, and then eventually come back down to apologize. After all, he'd never faced a firm no from me before. But I was wrong. What followed over the next few weeks was nothing short of chaos. The very next morning, I found him sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He didn't even say good morning. Instead, he muttered, "So, you're really not paying for college? You're just going to ruin my future." I took a deep breath and answered, "I'm not ruining anything. You're still young. You can apply for scholarships, get a part-time job, take out student loans, just like millions of kids do. I'm not abandoning you, but I won't reward disrespect." He slammed his laptop shut and shouted, "This is abuse. You're literally abusing me." That word, abuse, hit me like a hammer. I've spent decades working to provide for him, and now he was throwing that word at me, as if I had done nothing for him all these years. Later that day, I got a phone call. It was my sister, his aunt. And do you know what she said? "I just spoke to your son. He told me you're refusing to pay for his education. What's going on with you? How could you do that to your own child?" Turns out, he'd already been on the phone spreading his version of the story to anyone who would listen. He told my relatives that I was playing favorites, that I gave everything to my daughter and left him with nothing. He made me sound like some cruel, heartless father. I calmly told my sister the truth, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. "Still," she said, "he's just a kid. Maybe you could bend a little." Bend? I had bent over backwards for that boy his entire life. A few days later, my daughter came over. She looked exhausted, like she'd been caught in the middle of something. She sat me down and said, "Dad, he's been calling me nonstop, too. He wants me to convince you to change your mind." I shook my head. "And what did you tell him?" She smiled sadly. "I told him to grow up, but he doesn't listen." The situation escalated the following weekend. We were invited to a big family barbecue at my brother's house. I debated not going, but my daughter convinced me, "Dad, you can't let him control you like this. Just come, enjoy yourself. Don't worry." So I went. And guess who was there, standing in the yard with a smug look on his face? My son. From the moment I arrived, I felt the tension. A couple of relatives gave me side eyes. Others avoided me completely. Finally, during dinner, the storm hit. My son stood up, holding his soda like it was a champagne glass, and said loudly, "I just want to thank everyone here for supporting me while my own father refuses to pay for my future." The entire table gasped. I nearly choked on my food. He continued, "Can you believe it? He paid for my sister's college, but when it's my turn, he suddenly decides he's broke. Guess some kids are just worth more than others." People started murmuring. I could feel the heat rising in my face. My brother's wife whispered, "Oh my goodness," while my cousin shook his head in disbelief. I couldn't sit silent anymore. I stood up and said firmly, "That is not true. I have done everything for you. You chose to disrespect me, and respect is not optional in this family. You don't mock your father and then expect him to hand you a blank check." But he wasn't done. He sneered and said, "You're just bitter because you know you failed as a father. Mom would have paid for me." That one cut deep. My wife had been gone for years, and he dared to use her memory as a weapon against me. The table erupted. My daughter slammed her hand down and yelled, "Enough! Stop twisting things. You've treated Dad like garbage, and you think you deserve everything handed to you? No, you're embarrassing yourself." But he laughed, and muttered, "Wow, Daddy's little princess defending him again." What a shock. I had to walk away. I went inside, sat in the living room, and tried to collect myself. My brother eventually came in and put a hand on my shoulder. He whispered, "I see it now. He's out of line. Don't give in." Later that night, after everyone went home, I got a text from my son. It said, "You'll regret this. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of father you really are." And that was when I realized this wasn't just about tuition anymore. This was about control. He wanted to use shame, guilt, and family pressure to bend me to his will. But I had made my choice, and I wasn't going to back down. The days that followed were filled with whispers and phone calls. Relatives asking me if it was true. Some told me I was cruel. Others quietly admitted they admired my stance. My daughter stayed by my side through all. She even told me, "Dad, sometimes tough love is the only love that works." Meanwhile, my son doubled down. He refused to do chores, refused to even look at me. He'd walk past me in the house and mutter things like, "deadbeat," or "worst dad ever." It was exhausting. But little did he know, I was already planning my next move. Because if he thought he could bully me into submission, he was about to learn the hardest lesson of his life. And trust me, that lesson was going to come sooner than he expected. The moral for this chapter? Sometimes standing your ground means being painted as the villain, at least for a while. But real justice requires patience, because eventually, the truth has a way of shining through the lies. After the barbecue fiasco, my son doubled down on his campaign. He wasn't satisfied with just gossiping to family. He began spreading the story at church, among neighbors, and even online. Yes, online. Imagine my shock when my daughter showed me a post he made on Facebook. In it, he wrote, "My father refuses to pay for my college education. He always favored my sister, gave her everything, and now he's throwing me away like garbage. I guess some dads just don't care about their sons." The comments section was full of sympathy at first. People wrote things like, "So sorry you're going through this," and "That's not fair. Parents should treat kids equally." He was eating it up, replying to every comment like he was some kind of victim. But then, slowly, the truth started leaking out. My daughter, bless her heart, commented under the post, "Funny how you left out the part where you insulted Dad at dinner, called him broke, and told him he failed as a father. Respect goes both ways." That comment blew the whole thing open. Suddenly, people began asking questions. Wait, what really happened? Is this the full story? His friends, who knew how spoiled he was, began chiming in too. One even wrote, "Bro, your dad gave you a car. You live rent-free. What are you even complaining about?" He deleted the post within an hour. But the damage was done. His attempt to paint himself as a victim backfired. At home, things were worse. He refused to get a part-time job. I told him, "If you want college, you need to contribute. I'll support you emotionally, I'll guide you, but financially, you're on your own until you show me respect." He scoffed and said, "I don't work for minimum wage. I'm not like those losers at McDonald's." I couldn't believe my ears. I replied, "Son, when I was your age, I worked nights at a gas station just to put food on the table. No job is beneath you." But he just rolled his eyes and went back to his video games. Then came the twist I didn't expect. One evening, my daughter showed up with some papers. She looked serious. "Dad, I think you should see this." It was a stack of overdue credit card statements in my name. Thousands of dollars charged for electronics, clothes, and even online gaming subscriptions. My jaw dropped. I asked, "Where did you get these?" She sighed and said, "Dad, I think he's been using your information. He bragged about buying stuff online." I checked, and these are your accounts. I felt my stomach drop. My own son had been stealing from me. That night, I confronted him. I held up the bills and said, "Care to explain this?" He froze. His face turned pale. Then he tried to laugh it off. "Relax, Dad. It's just a few things. I was going to pay it back once you paid for school." "A few things?" I shouted. "This is thousands of dollars. This is fraud. Do you even understand what you've done?" He shrugged and muttered, "It's not a big deal. You always act like you're poor anyway." That was the moment something inside me hardened. It wasn't just about tuition anymore. It wasn't even about respect. This was theft, betrayal. My son wasn't just spoiled. He was reckless, manipulative, and dangerous with money. I told him, "Pack your things. You're out of this house." He laughed in my face. "You wouldn't dare. You need me. You'd be all alone without me." But I wasn't bluffing. I gave him 1 week to leave. My daughter supported me, even offered to help me change my passwords and secure my finances. She said, "Dad, he's been using you for too long. It's time." Word spread quickly through the family, of course. Some relatives called me cruel again, but others started seeing the truth. My brother told me, if that was my kid, I'd have kicked him out years ago. The night before he was supposed to leave, he tried one last stunt. He stormed into the living room and said, "If you kick me out, you'll never see me again. I'll cut you off for good." I looked him straight in the eye and replied, "Son, you already cut yourself off the moment you chose to steal from me. If you want to come back one day, it won't be for money. It will be because you've grown into a man who respects his father." For the first time in years, he was speechless. The next morning, he left with a single duffel bag, slamming the door one last time. I sat at the table in silence, my heart heavy but strangely relieved. My daughter hugged me and whispered, "You did the right thing, Dad. Sometimes love means letting go." And though I didn't say it out loud, I knew she was right. Because as painful as it was, I finally realized enabling bad behavior isn't love. It's poison. The moral of this chapter? Boundaries are not cruelty. They are protection. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to let someone destroy themselves, or you, in the process. After my son left, the house felt both empty and strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, I could hear myself think without someone complaining, demanding, or criticizing every little thing. But the peace didn't last long, not because of him, but because the aftermath began to ripple through the family. At first, I thought maybe he would learn a lesson, that he would struggle a bit, face reality, and come crawling back apologizing. I was optimistic, but the first week proved just how unprepared he really was for independence. My daughter called me one evening. She sounded half amused, half exasperated. "Dad," she said, "he tried to move into his friend's apartment, and he didn't even have a job lined up. They told him he can't stay unless he contributes to rent and utilities." Guess what he did? I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "What?" He went home, back to our place, and they refused. So now he's crashing on a friend's couch, borrowing money, and panicking because he has nothing saved. He called me crying, saying he never realized life was so hard without Dad paying for everything. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. Not because I wanted him to suffer, but because reality was finally catching up to him. Over the next few weeks, the dominoes kept falling. My son's friends began distancing themselves. They were fed up with his attitude and his constant borrowing. One friend told my daughter he's always acted like he was entitled to everything. Now that he has to actually work for it, he's freaking out. Meanwhile, the stories he'd been telling the family slowly unraveled. Relatives who had initially believed him started asking questions. "Is it true he called you names?" they asked. "Did he really take your credit cards?" I explained calmly. Yes and yes. I didn't want to speak badly about him to anyone, but the truth matters. He wasn't honest, and he disrespected me for years. The reaction surprised me. Most of the family finally sided with me. My brother said, "You were right all along." He needed a wake-up call. Even the aunt who had scolded me months earlier admitted, I didn't realize he had been lying about everything. The funniest part came when my son tried to convince a cousin to lend him money. He said, "You have to help me. My father refuses to pay for my tuition or my bills. He's cruel." The cousin laughed, and said, "Dude, he's been telling everyone how terrible you are for years. You're on your own. Get a job and figure it out." By now, my son was panicking. He had no money, no friends willing to bail him out, and he still had college applications looming. For the first time, he had to make adult decisions. He had to apply for scholarships, fill out financial aid forms, and, horrifyingly for him, get a job. I won't lie. It was satisfying to watch him struggle, but I also worried. I worried because I knew he had never truly faced consequences before. He wasn't used to rejection, hard work, or disappointment. And now he had all three at once. Weeks passed, and every phone call from my daughter included updates. He tried to get a part-time job at the coffee shop, but he was late to the interview. He can't manage his money. He bought a new game instead of groceries. He's panicking about tuition deadlines and scholarships. I told him he has to plan, or he's screwed. I started to feel a strange mix of pride and guilt. Pride, because he was finally facing the real world. Guilt, because I couldn't help him in the way I wanted, but I knew helping him financially would undo all the lessons he needed to learn. Then came a phone call I'd been dreading and anticipating. It was him. "Dad, he said, voice trembling. I messed up. I didn't know how hard it would be. I can't do it alone. I stayed silent for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. You mean you're sorry? I asked finally. Yes, he whispered. I was wrong. I disrespected you. I used you. I don't know how to fix it. I sighed. This was the moment. The moment he had to realize that respect, responsibility, and humility were worth more than any check I could write. Son, I said slowly, apologies are good, but actions matter more. If you want help, you have to show me you've learned something. You need to find a job, pay off what you owe, and start treating people, including me, with respect. Only then will I consider helping you with college. There was silence on the line. Then I can do that. I promise. It was the first time I had heard genuine accountability in years. No whining, no excuses, no manipulations. Just responsibility. In the days that followed, I watched him change, slowly, awkwardly, like a toddler learning to walk. He got a job at a local grocery store. He learned a budget. He apologized to friends he had mistreated. Even small victories felt monumental. He brought home groceries and thanked me for helping him plan meals. He wasn't perfect, but he was learning. And the family? They noticed too. My daughter would whisper, "Look, Dad, people are finally seeing the truth about him." My relatives who had doubted me started complimenting my patience. My brother said, "You didn't just punish him, you taught him." That's remarkable. Even my son eventually admitted it. One evening, he came home from work, sweaty and exhausted, and said, "Dad, I never thought working for money, making my own choices, would feel rewarding. I get it now. I was wrong to treat you like that." That was the moment I realized the real victory wasn't financial. It wasn't about tuition or stolen credit cards. The victory was watching him grow up, the hard way, into someone who could finally respect himself and his family. The moral of this chapter? Sometimes the consequences have to be harsh for the lesson to stick. Love isn't always about giving what they want. It's about guiding them toward what they need, even if it hurts for a while. And justice? Justice isn't about revenge. It's about letting the natural consequences teach the hardest lessons. By the time my son began to take responsibility, it was clear to everyone that a transformation was underway. It didn't happen overnight. Growth never does, but the change was real, visible, and heartfelt. After a few months of working at the grocery store, budgeting his own money, and paying back small amounts toward the debts he had racked up, he started to understand the weight of his actions. He came home one evening, exhausted, but with a proud gleam in his eye. "Dad," he said quietly, "I cashed my first paycheck. I bought groceries, paid a small part of what I owe, and even put a little in savings." I smiled. It was a small victory, but monumental for someone who had never learned the value of money or respect. I nodded. "I'm proud of you. Keep going. Consistency is what matters." The next challenge was college. I had made it clear from the start. No respect, no money. But now he was different. He filled out applications on his own, applied for scholarships, and even took a part-time night job while managing schoolwork. He was exhausted, but determined. Then one day, my daughter came running into the house with a letter in her hand. "Dad, he got a scholarship, and not just a small one. He got enough to cover nearly half of tuition." I felt my chest tighten. Seeing him finally reap the rewards of hard work and accountability filled me with an indescribable mix of relief and pride. Even the extended family started noticing. My relatives who had once whispered about my cruelty began to send messages of congratulations. "He's learning responsibility," one aunt wrote. "You did the right thing by letting him face consequences." But the most powerful moment came a few weeks later. My son came into the living room, sat down across from me, and said, "Dad, I need to say something. I've been thinking about everything. How I treated you, the things I said at that barbecue, stealing your credit cards. I was terrible, and I'm sorry. Really sorry." I studied his face carefully. No smirk, no excuses, just remorse. "Thank you," I said. "Apologies mean little without action. But I see your actions now. That's what counts." He nodded. "I know I have a long way to go, but I want to try. Not just for school or money, but for our relationship. I want to be a son you can respect." I felt a lump in my throat. After years of frustration, manipulation, and heartbreak, I realized we were finally at a turning point. Over the next few months, the transformation continued. He kept working part-time jobs while studying, managing his finances responsibly, and learning humility. Slowly, our home regained a sense of harmony. He started helping around the house without being asked. He apologized to friends he had wronged and even reconciled with neighbors he had offended with his arrogance. My daughter watched with a mixture of relief and amazement. "Dad," she said one evening, "I think he finally gets it, and it's all because you stood your ground. You didn't give him what he demanded, he earned it instead." It was true. By refusing to give in to his demands, I had forced him to confront the consequences of his choices. That was the lesson he needed most. There were still bumps in the road. He struggled to balance school, work, and his social life. He made mistakes. He occasionally slipped back into old habits, but each time, he remembered the lessons he had learned, the hard way. Each failure became an opportunity for growth rather than entitlement. And the ultimate validation came at the end of the year. He called me one evening, excitement in his voice. "Dad, I did it. I got into college with a scholarship covering most of my tuition. And I've saved enough to cover my books and living expenses without asking you for a cent." I sat back, feeling a warmth I hadn't experienced in years. My son had finally learned the value of responsibility, respect, and hard work. He had turned the corner, not because I caved or gave in, but because I refused to reward arrogance. Later, at a small family gathering to celebrate his acceptance, he stood and raised a glass. "I want to thank Dad," he said, voice steady and sincere. "He didn't make this easy for me, but because he demanded I grow up, I did. And I'm a better person for it." The room was silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. I felt my daughter squeeze my hand, eyes shining with pride. And in that moment, I understood something fundamental. Parenting isn't about giving children what they want. It's about guiding them to become responsible, respectful adults, even if it means tough love, hard lessons, and moments of pain. The moral of this story is simple. Boundaries, discipline, and accountability are forms of love. They aren't cruelty, and justice, in its truest form, is not about revenge or punishment. It's about allowing consequences to teach the lessons life insists on delivering. My son finally learned respect, responsibility, and humility. And the best part? He earned it himself. No shortcuts, no entitlement. The transformation was complete, and in that transformation, the family found healing, fairness, and the sweet, quiet satisfaction of seeing karma, just and patient, finally do its work. Because sometimes the hardest thing a parent can do is say no, but sometimes that no is the most loving, life-changing gift of all.